Hello and welcome to a special morning edition, a Monday morning edition of the Americano Show. I am delighted to be joined in the Spectator's office by the great Roger Kimball, our much-loved columnist and publisher and author. And we're going to be talking about what else? The assassination attempt on Donald Trump on Saturday night in Butler, Pennsylvania. Roger, it's now, we're now, how many hours are we since the...
30-ish.
30-ish.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump has already given an interview.
Yes.
He gave an interview to two journalists yesterday. No pictures, though.
Right.
We're not allowed to see the condition of the
Right, the cauliflower ear.
The cauliflower ear.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of memes going around for anyone who's into that kind of thing.
Right.
He said, interestingly, I thought in the in that interview, that the reason he turned his head at that crucial moment,
Yes.
Thus making the bullet miss by a couple of centimeters, was he was looking at a chart about illegal migration.
Yes, a subject that has riveted Donald Trump's and indeed the country's attention for years as millions and millions of unsavory illegals pour over what used to be the southern border. So I suppose this is an illustration of the fact that life is full of ironies, that Donald Trump, at least in some sense, was saved by illegal migrants. Although we should keep in mind Aristotle's fourfold schema of causation. It's not the material cause of Trump's salvation, but something else.
Something else. But he does seem to be having, it's similar in a way to when he had COVID in 2020. The few outbursts we've had from Trump since the incident, he does seem to be having one of these sort of Damascene moments that he is prone to, where he reconsiders his life, and he's talking now about he's going to ditch his speech that he had prepared for Thursday, I think it is, at the convention.
Yes.
And he's going to give more of a unifying speech.
This is true. I wrote a column for a lesser publication just a couple days ago. I happened to be here from France. I was padding around the battlefields in Verdun and the Somme. And it was borne in upon me that it was July 18th, 1918, when the French forces mounted their furious counteroffensives against the teetering German forces, thus precipitating the end of World War I in mid-November. And I thought, well, gosh, here's another historical, is it an irony? Is it a resonance? Anyway, an interesting, at least coincidence that Donald Trump is going to be giving his speech at the Republican convention on this July 18th, and I expect a full collapse of the Central Powers in November 2024.
Yeah. But I think, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of Kant talked about unifying and unity and so on.
Right.
But a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump,
right,
it's fair to say he has an opportunity now to touch their hearts.
Yes, and I think, one thing that's been borne in upon me over the last several years when the Trump phenomenon switched from being a celebrity comedy show to being something quite a bit more serious is the large element of projection, what Freud called projection, in the metabolism of the anti-Trump sentiment. In other words, what is projection? Projection is that psychological phenomenon where we attribute to others the bad behavior that we, in fact, engage in. So Donald Trump is widely excoriated as a dictator in waiting. He's going to weaponize the Department of Justice against his opponents and put people in jail. I mean, of course, this is exactly what they are doing.
Yes.
As far as I can recall, I don't remember Donald Trump putting anyone in jail.
And that is triggered by guilt, is it not? And we saw a bit of that in the wake of the shooting on Saturday.
Indeed.
Where, within seconds you had a CNN pundit saying, that when he stood up and said, fight, 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 that's exactly the rhetoric we don't want at the moment. And
no, it's exactly the rhetoric we do want.
Yeah.
Fight, fight, fight for the country. That's what he's talking about.
Yes.
And, it's CNN.
That's what you expect, I suppose.
Yeah.
But generally, though,
the Communist News Network.
There is this instant reaction, which has been to say, not people are a bit more cautious, I'd say, generally, than to say, he's asked for it. With his rhetoric, but they've come pretty close to.
Well, I've seen some reports that do say that. Actually, I'm not saying it's the major theme in this symphony of reaction to the. It was an attempted murder, right? In fact, it was a successful murder. They murdered this poor fireman who, that was pretty bad, and 2 other people are seriously injured. We don't know anything about them yet. At least I don't. But
yes,
I think we should get around to talking about the Secret Service and this extraordinary lapse of competence on the part of the detail that is supposed to be protecting the presumptive Republican nominee and former president and likely future president of the United States. Here you had a chap who was about 130 yards, I'm told, away from the stage. And it's outside the security perimeter. Now, if you told me that right over there across the road there, that's outside the security perimeter, and yet here we are in front of this window, somebody could take a clear shot at us. That is gross negligence. It's horrible, really. Now, who is responsible for this? The director of the Secret Service is a female called Kimberly Cheetle, I think is how you say her surname. She's appointed by Biden in 2022. And what are her qualifications for this august position? Well, she used to work for Pepsi-Cola. As Elon Musk put it, she was guarding bags of Cheetos. Not exactly the qualification one looks for in the world's, presumably, one of the world's premier services to guard important political figures. What's her major goal? What's her vision for the Secret Service? Well, she has said time and again that what she wants to do, the most important thing she wants to accomplish, is to achieve 30% females in the Secret Service by 2030. Well, that's great. As Megyn Kelly said, this is ridiculous. You saw some of the Secret Service people crowding around Donald Trump, these small women, kind of crouching in front of Trump instead of actually, covering his body and so on. Megyn Kelly was right. She said it doesn't help women's empowerment to give them jobs for which they are not qualified or suited, and by the way, which endanger other people. Why? To soothe the politically correct sentiments of people who have outrun their own limitations. Yeah. So it's a horrible thing that is happening. And Ann Coulter, I'm citing females just to show that I'm not. It's not merely patriarchal sentiment on my part. She said she should be fired, and I agree.
Well, let's try. Let me mount a pathetic defence of the Secret Service. They did the bundling, quite effectively, I'd say. They covered him up pretty well.
Yes, yeah.
There was a guy who Trump has said has really hurt his arm. He's got a big bruise on his arm.
Yes, right.
They managed to knock Trump's shoes off. They were so vigorous.
Yes.
In pinning him to the floor. Which was my favourite moment of the whole thing.
Yes, my shoes.
Get me my shoes. It's a very human thought, isn't it?
Right.
But
they were nice shoes. I saw a picture of them. Lobs, But
and they did. And I mean, I do think the worst bit is that clip that probably everybody's now seen of those two lady agents.
Yes.
One
Listen, what is this? It looks like a gun. Where do you put this?
She looked like I would look like if I was trying to holster a gun.
Yes. I hope you realize you were addressing someone who has a concealed carry permit in the august state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
You are. That's me.
I hope you managed to sneak it into London.
I did not. For those of you out there who are listening.
For the Secret Service.
But I was asked not the worst, Freddie. The worst was the two snipers who were part of the detail. We don't know whether they were Secret Service or local law enforcement who were on a roof looking around, and I'm told that they had this guy in their sights for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and that they did not get the permission to take him out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is that?
Well,
how did that happen? What
was extraordinary about that was well, clearly there were people at the rally. We've seen testimonies to this effect that they were telling agents, the local police, that there was a guy on the roof. There's a guy on the roof
with a gun.
With a gun. That was happening quite because he wasn't dressed in.
It looks like a gun anyway.
He wasn't dressed like a policeman. He wasn't deceptively dressed.
No.
He looked like a shooter.
Yes.
And yet
sometimes appearances are not deceiving.
Sometimes the guy with the gun pointing at the presidential candidate is. But that nothing seemed to happen until he had fired off those 4 or 5 shots.
Yes.
That is indefensible.
Completely indefensible. It's also an opportunity for conspiracy theories to get going.
Yes.
Sometimes conspiracy theories are true.
Yes.
I mean, when Calpurnia told her husband on March 14th, 44 BC, that there was a conspiracy against his life, she was right.
Yeah. Well, probably the more ridiculous conspiracy theory is on the left at the moment, which is that
it was staged.
It was all staged.
Yes.
And I think the thing you'd say about that is to stage a bullet clipping an ear.
Yes.
Unless they're going to try and pretend that somehow he put a razor to his ear. And
that's what he did.
That's obviously what he did. Yeah. But I don't think that there's anything to credit that other than lunacy.
No, that's right, lunacy. Yeah. Well, and actually, it's not just lunacy; it's also malevolence.
Yes,
we can't leave out that important.
The hatred for Trump is so strong that they cannot feel sympathy.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it is very curious. I'm very eager to. I'm not sure I'll be up for that late, but. Will it be later or earlier here when he gives his talk? I'm not sure. I think
it'll probably be at very early hours of the morning. Yeah.
So I'll probably be asleep, but I'll catch it the next day. But I'm sure it's going to be great. I mean, he's got fantastic speechwriters, and he himself is able when he exerts himself to give a rousing speech. So it'll be very important. It's I expect him. I've expected him to win now for quite some time, but I think it's going to be a landslide.
Well, I do think what's been extraordinary is the last few weeks how everything seems to be falling into place for him.
Yes.
And
he's like Lazarus. He was dead.
Yes.
After January 6th, that way we can write him off. It's all over. Although even now it turns out that that was kind of like a Reichstag fire event, wasn't it? January 6th, at least I believe that the feds had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But people are just astonished at what's happened with him. And now you have Elon Musk endorsing him and saying he's going to contribute. David Sachs, Peter Thiel's former colleague. Even Jeff Bezos had a little tweet saying that how much he admired his courage and so on. I don't know if he's going to be shoveling any money Trump's way, but it's amazing.
That is something that might suggest a landslide. Obviously, these people are sort of a handful of rich influencers.
Yes.
But there does seem to be, I would say, a mood of lessening hostility towards Trump. I think the power of Trump hatred is waning.
Yes, that kind of creaking sound you hear is the narrative turning around like a huge battleship, and it's going to be pointed in a different direction. So I think the anti-Trump fanatics like Bill Kristol and Jonah Goldberg and all of those guys, and Jen Rubin, they're in the wilderness, I think, and I wouldn't be surprised to see not Bill Kristol, but I wouldn't be surprised, or Jen Rubin, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some of them modifying their positions.
And by the time this is aired, we might have the news already, but we understand that today there might be a vice presidential announcement.
Yes.
How significant do you think that will be? Do these things really change race?
They do matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm told that the among the people he vetted originally, which was Doug Burgum, Marco Rubio of Florida, and J.D. Vance of Ohio, that J.D. was kind of at the top of the heap. But I've heard just in the last few days that Glenn Youngkin, of the state of Virginia, is also in play. I don't know if that's true.
Yes.
But I think J.D. or Glenn Youngkin would be fantastic. I mean, if the reason to consider Glenn Youngkin, apart from his own qualifications, which are significant, he's a very able man, is that if Trump wins Virginia, that will be a landslide, because a lot of things will follow from that. And Virginia is in play, amazingly enough.
Yes.
The state of New Jersey is in play, which is amazing. The state of New York, Biden's still ahead, but by a couple of points. Biden won by 21 points in 2020, so it's extraordinary.
Well, what might happen in this moment, post-shooting, is that the Republican Party might unite around Trump in a way it hasn't always.
In fact, never has. Yeah,
never has.
Yeah. And so I don't know what happens to the Reince Priebuses and the Mike Pences and all the people who are Republicans, but sort of what I think of as sort of low testosterone Republicans. I don't know what happens with them.
Well, Nikki Haley has been invited to speak at the convention.
Yes, and she has endorsed Trump.
She has endorsed Trump. So that is and she seemed to be the person who Republicans who just can't bring themselves to vote for Trump were going for Nikki Haley.
Oh, big time. Yeah, big time. Yeah.
And yet she's
there's the Babylon Bee. Is that popular over here? It's a satirical site. When Nikki Haley was still in the race, they said that she was stymied by a reporter who asked her to name a country that she didn't want to invade.
And then let's look at how Team Biden, Joe Biden's White House, will be looking at this incident. Biden last night addressed the nation.
Yes, he addressed the nation for about a minute and a half.
For a minute, lengthy.
And didn't take any questions because he's incapable of taking questions. That's right.
But he still managed to flub.
But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. That's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets.
So battle boxes are going to define.
Well, when I was in the Somme just a few days ago, the news in the morning, they just played over and over and over again his statements that at the NATO conference, this statement he introduced President Zelensky as President Putin. And then he said, someone asked him, well, do you think that Kamala Harris would be up for the responsibilities of the top job if it should come to that? And he said, I would not have picked Vice President Trump to be my running mate. I didn't think she was capable, So, I mean, everybody makes slips. Obama spoke of the 52 states and so on. But this is something, a whole other level of incompetence and senile failure.
Well, we were hearing yesterday that people in the White House think that Biden might be able to use this because empathy is his big card. They always say that about Joe Biden, that he's great at empathy.
Yes, just ask the person whom he referred to as a dog-faced pony soldier. Or is that something like that? I don't think so. I think that the carefully cultivated image of old Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania, has been pretty much exploded. I mean, he's a serial liar and a serial plagiarist. His press, that Muppet he has as a press secretary, when it was pointed out to her that Joe Biden had plagiarized Ronald Reagan's 1984 speech from Normandy, said he didn't plagiarize that, he copied it.
Well, I think I mean, it seems to me that Republicans might be in danger of hubris as they approach November, because there's a long way to go.
There is.
Donald Trump is an explosive person.
He is. He's an unguided missile in many ways.
And I'd say almost at his most dangerous when he has, like he did when he got COVID, this sort of evangelical spirit enters him. He thinks he's being
well, you're quite right there. I mean, hubris is regularly followed by nemesis, and we don't want that. On the other hand, I have to say the way in which Trump is handling his campaign is light years ahead of what he did in 2016, when it was a really ramshackle sort of operation, or even 2020. He's got really terrific people around him. This woman, Susie Wiles, is a genius. And Trump himself has exhibited much more discipline, I think. He could have been a little better at the debate, but Joe Biden did him the favor of, disintegrating before his eyes. But he's been very quiet. And until yesterday or the day before when he was shot, he wasn't intervening in the debate, which is probably a good thing. He knows how to keep quiet, which is something he didn't know, I think, in the past. So I think that you're right to raise the possibility of hubris, because I think everything, as you also said, is kind of clicking in Donald Trump's way now. I mean, it's what's happened over the last couple of months is extraordinary, but we must never take it for granted.
Roger Kimball, thank you very much for coming on to the Americano Show.
My pleasure.